Today we have as a moderator, Dr. Djibril Thiam from AgrobioServices, and we have Dr. Brigid, Letty with the Institute of Natural Resources. We have Anna Samake from MBC Africa, and Yvonne Ofosu-Appiah from Wangara Green Ventures. So I will give the floor to Dr. Djibril Thiam, who will introduce himself and introduce also the panel. So thank you.
Thank you, Awa. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today for the second day of the conference. My name is Djibril Thiam, and I am the Executive Director of an NGO called AgrobioServices. And we work in the promotion of organic agriculture and social and solidarity entrepreneurship. And we are located in Thiès in Senegal. Thiès is near than Dakar, 45 kilometers. I will be the moderator of the session today. And I think we will have normally 45 minutes. And first I will give the floor to Brigid, Anna, and Yvonne to introduce themselves. And after we will have a short presentation of Brigid before opening the question and answer part. Thanks to you again to everyone. And Brigid, you have the floor for your presentation or your introduction.
Okay, thanks, Djibril. My name is Brigid Letty, and I'm from the Institute of Natural Resources, which is a non-profit company based in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna?
So my name is Tanemba Anna. I'm Executive Director of MBC Africa, which is an advisory firm with focus on building agricultural value chains, headquartered in Ghana.
Thank you, Anna. And Anna speak French.
Hi, everyone, and good morning.
Yvonne?
Okay, thanks, Djibril, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. So I'm Yvonne Ofosu-Appiah, the CIO for Wangara Green Ventures, which is an impact investing company based here in Accra, Ghana. Wangara invests in small and growing businesses using equity and quasi-equity instruments in the local currency in the equivalent of between $50,000 to $500,000 and up to 1 million in follow-on funding. Our priority sectors are in renewable energy, energy efficiency, waste and water management, and climate smart agriculture. So I'm very happy that we're talking about sustainable agriculture in this section, and happy to share my insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Brigid. Now we can go to the short presentation of Brigid. Brigid, you have the floor, Brigid.
Thank you. Right, is that showing on full screen for everybody?
He's coming.
Okay, is it there?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes, now it's okay.
Yes, I can see.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in the session today, both to share some of our findings and also to draw on the knowledge and experiences of others. So basically, we're looking at instruments that can support innovation that target small and growing businesses, or SGBs, in the agriculture sector. Just in terms of some background, this is part of a study that we're undertaking. We were appointed by the Commission on Sustainable Agriculture Intensification, or CoSAI, and I'm heading up a team. It's led by the Institute of Natural Resources, but it includes Thiam team members from a number of different parts of the world. So it's quite an exciting opportunity to all come together and reflect and learn together. Basically, we've been appointed to undertake a study that would provide recommendations to investors and innovation managers about the types of instruments that they could fund that would effectively provide support to agricultural innovation. And because it's been because we've been appointed by CoSAI, obviously it's also towards achieving sustainable agriculture intensification. And I thought it would just be useful to put the definition of SAI in the box below. So basically it's about transformative changes in agriculture and food systems that are urgently required to meet rapidly increasing global needs for affordable, nutritious, safe and healthy food, while protecting and improving the natural environment and promoting resilient livelihoods and social equity. So that's what the Commission is hoping to achieve. At this stage, we're still in the early stages of the study, but we have come up with a preliminary list of 14 instruments. What we've tried to do is avoid looking at broad approaches as well as very specific tools. And that's led us to a list of 14, which I'm going to share with you. So the first one is challenge funds. The second is farmer-driven innovation support funds, innovation funds or grants, prizes or awards, insurance for innovation, innovation platforms, innovation hubs, farmer research networks, living labs, farmer field schools, incubators, accelerators, which are often associated with pitch events, results-based funding contracts, and brokerage or intermediaries. I put together this slide, which I hope provides an overview of our study and what we're hoping to achieve. So basically, one has on the left, you have your investors and innovation managers who are making investments in various instruments. And those instruments could be financial or social or technical instruments that one hopes would lead to some form of innovation. And by innovation, we're really looking at this in its broadest sense. So we're looking, for example, at firms that are developing new products or providing new services like mechanization or processing grain on behalf of producers, for example, new processes within their farms or their firms, and new organizational arrangements, and lastly, new marketing systems. And one hopes that through these different innovations, one's going to see a change toward more sustainable agricultural systems. And if we talk about SAI, we look at systems that have multiple impacts. So we would like to understand, we'd like to see interventions that result in improved productivity, but they also consider environmental impacts, they consider social impacts, human well-being, as well as economic impacts. So what we've been asked to do is to provide recommendations based on evidence from previous projects or previous initiatives where instruments have been used. And we are exploring the context in which they've been effective. So was a particular instrument useful in a livestock production system, or was it only in a high value export vegetable production system? Was it with smallholder farmers or large scale farmers? What were the objectives of the initiative in which those that instrument was used? Because that will inform the recommendations in terms of factors, design factors that must be considered if a specific instrument is to be used. So from the review of documentation so far and from engaging with people, there are a few preliminary findings that I think would be interesting to share at this point. The first one is the definition of an innovation, and everybody has slightly different views on this. I've always seen it as something that's new to the firm, not necessarily new to the world. Otherwise, it would just be looking at inventions. But I've also come across this concept that it's about new knowledge or technology being applied so that it actually has led to some level of social or economic benefit, that's when one can term it an innovation and not just a research output, for example. It's been interesting to see that many of the instruments rely on bringing multiple stakeholders together. I also found it interesting that many of the instruments, for example, incubators, they're often virtual rather than brick and mortar structures. And I found that to be quite interesting. And lastly, and I think this is of particular interest to this forum, is that most of the instruments are evolving so that there's a clear focus on supporting business aspects and market access. It's not focusing on the technology for the sake of the technology or the system for the sake of the system. It really is about getting people more involved in value chains and in market participation. So thank you very much. Djibril, I'm going to hand back to you, but I thought perhaps you'd take the opportunity to perhaps share a couple of examples of instruments that you've come across so far in West Africa.
Yeah. Thank you, Brigid. Thank you for your presentation. You can put your question in the chat after, and Awa will help me to follow it after. Throughout the study, we have noted that those instruments are widely used in West and Central Africa by the agriculture development actor, even if some instruments are used more than others. We have not the same level of this instrument. And we noted a very interesting use of this instrument, particularly in three agriculture sector. We noticed in the cassava, promoting cassava, in the local milk, and in the development of local poultry farming in 3 countries, in Ghana, in Mali, and in Togo. And we find that there we have nice result in the 3 countries. For cassava, we noted that in Kumasi, in Ghana, that the innovation platform, because we find that they have country platform, innovation platform in Kumasi, Ghana, stimulate learning and partnership between producers and support service to improve cassava production through the introduction of improved cassava variety. And we found that women's enterprise have been developed with the support of platform members. And I think it is a good instrument to promote the woman enterprise in the country. For the challenge fund with the local support fund approach, we found that in Mali, a young Malian has developed an incubator business with local resource, and we see that they use the local resource, and it is very important to have this kind of innovation, because to promote this kind of innovation, the adoption is very possible for other farmers or other people, and with the innovation, we managed to have 80% of hatching rate. The last one we found in the study, very important, is in Togo, is we found that it's very important to develop a small business around the milk processing and traditional cheese making sector in Togo with the incubation of Koraf. And we have many examples, but we found that the instruments are used to develop the sector of agriculture and to help the women and the young develop their own enterprise. And I think this kind of instrument can be promoted to resolve the problem of work of the woman, for the woman and the young boys. Yeah. But we will have after the discussion all the things we can share. Okay. Yvonne, Anna.
Yes, Djibril.
Yes, I have a question for you.
Okay.
we observed the presentation of Brigid.
Mhm.
Which of these instruments do you think as being particularly relevant for supporting innovation by small and growing business, and why?
Okay, as I explained earlier, we are an advisory firm that focuses on agriculture value chain. And all our approaches are holistic and systemic, because we learn very early on that if you really want to grow something, you have to make sure that you have the right ecosystem for it to grow. And innovation is the same thing, right? To have a very healthy innovation system in agriculture. First of all, you have to develop that ecosystem in the rural area, not in the capital. Rule number one, we learn. Number two, all the stakeholders have to be involved. And I think Brigid's survey came out with the same result. If everybody's not involved, there's a great chance that your innovation will fall short. Let me explain. In the ecosystem, you will have different value chains. So you will have technology value chain, you will have financing value chain. For example, in the financing value chain, someone like Yvonne doesn't come in the beginning, because you have to find maybe some soft money or some grants to finance the design of a minimum viable product, test it somehow before someone like Yvonne comes in and invests. So you should have a value chain of financing that will come in at that stage of the innovation until someone like Yvonne comes in. That's value chain of financing. Value chain of technology, same thing. Because you're in the rural area, your access to technology, for example, even communication, when you develop platforms, applications that they develop for farmers and so on and so forth, why don't they work? Because first, the farmer may not read and write. Secondly, he may not have access to it because of infrastructure in terms of communication and so on and so forth. So having the right partners, the right stakeholders, and having the value chains necessary in that ecosystem is very important. I will give you an example. Because we started working with the SMEs, we found out that most of our agribusinesses that are in the processing have issues with their supply chain. So we said, how do we help you improve your supply chain? That's how we came up with the Rural Enterprise Development Initiative, because we understood that we have to develop these smallholder farmers or put them in groups and develop them as companies, as businesses. So they understand everything that SME is going through. Because sometimes when you talk just with one farmer, he just wants to survive. But once they come together and they understand that they can be more than just surviving, they can even make money out of this, everything changes. Then they start listening to the off-takers that are the SMEs. Because when you produce something, you produce for a market. You don't just produce something that you think is good. You have to produce something that the market finds good and will buy at the price that they can. So changing that aspect in their supply chain impacts a lot the SMEs' capacities in terms of sustained supply and in terms of producing and providing products and services just after them. So I think we used 2 or 3 of these tools on your list of 14, MBC, we use them already. We have, as I said, the READY program, but we also have a financial inclusion program that we plugged into the READY program. It's still the holistic approach. It's still that platform to make sure that everybody, all the stakeholders are on the same page and we're moving towards the same goal. It's not just giving capacity building to the farmers or giving capacity building to the SMEs. No, it's working with them together on a specific value chain, all of them together, and bringing in the financial intermediaries in that conversation very early on, and the off-takers market. Because with the financial intermediary will discover that there is a market for this specific value chain, and then they will start looking at their own tools to adapt them to the needs of the actors of the value chain.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna. Yvonne, have you something to add? Yvonne?
You're muted.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you, Djibril. So as I already said, Wangara is an impact investing company. So as Anna indicated, we are mostly the financiers. And I'll say that sustainability is really at the core of our work. And so we remain committed to supporting agribusinesses that are approaching their work in a more sustainable and environmentally friendly manner. In doing this, it's important that you innovate around the funding instruments. So really in terms of your question regarding relevance, I'll say it really depends, one, on the kind of innovation and the targets audience or customers. And then again, I also say that what we have seen is usually a combination of the instruments that Brigid shared during her presentation. And so in terms of relevance, it will depend on the stage at which the entrepreneur is. And as Anna already indicated, it's important that we look at the entire continuum, because the intent of innovation is not really just to innovate, but to really see the businesses go to market with these kind of innovations. So for example, if I take innovation hubs, which was shared, you see that it's very useful at the ideation stage. For each of these instruments have the timing that they are useful for. And so it's very important in looking at them to look at the stage that the business is in. Innovation hubs like the Cosmos Innovation Center in Ghana actually helps entrepreneurs that have ideas regarding agribusinesses and innovations like that to be able to come into their program and kind of generate the idea and see how best they can actually make a business or such an idea. If I look at incubators, for example, the Ghana Climate Innovation Center that also looks at climate smart agricultural businesses, and they are usually, they give us also pipeline for investments. They also help these kind of innovators with proof of concept grants to help them take their businesses to the next stage. So in innovation, you find that some businesses are entirely new, so they are startups and they are introducing a new product. There are also businesses that have been in existence for over a year or two, and they are now seeking to innovate. So if I take, for example, one of the portfolio companies that we have invested in, so they are into poultry feed manufacturing. And at the time that we went in, they had already received a grant from the US Agricultural Fund, and they were using it to test the concept of using maggots that is farmed from the black soldier fly as protein supplement in their feed. So when Wangara started speaking with them, they were not entirely a new business. They already had a product, they had a customer base, and they had already accessed a grant facility. Now, what we did was to help them move that kind of innovation from the point where it was just an idea and they were not in a position to scale it, to the point where they can now produce in quantities that can be used in their own production and also commercialize it. So these kind of instruments, even including grants and others, are usually directly sourced by the businesses themselves, or they are managed by accelerators and incubators. So for example, InnoHub manages the AFIDBA program, which is the AFD funding for inclusive and digital businesses. And here they are able to help these businesses get themselves ready for commercial investments, or for impact investors like Wangara And so we find that these are very useful because at the point when the business has innovated or created something that is useful in terms of sustainable agriculture, it's important that whilst they are being given these kind of funding opportunities, the next stage of growth is also considered. So as at the time the business is being given a grant by a donor, what does the business do after they have used up this grant? And for us, this is where I think having incubators and accelerators is very useful, because beyond just giving them this grant funding, they would have prepared the business in terms of getting their business plans, getting them to start thinking about how they go to market with their products, how to commercialize it and make a business out of it. And that is where they are able to attract funding from impact investors like Wangara. Some of the instruments that Brigid shared, we've seen it usually, as I mentioned, in combination, so used together. And one of them being the Challenge Fund. We have seen a similar arrangement. So currently we are conducting due diligence on an agribusiness rice producer. And what they have done is they've obtained some kind of facility from the USAID, and it requires that if they are able to raise a certain amount of capital from commercial investors, then the USAID can match it with a grant. Now, one issue about grants is it takes a long time to actually be disbursed to these SMEs, SGBs. And then also there's a lot of rigor in the application process. So if the grant amount is also not adequate, then what happens is the business is not able to do so much with it. So with this kind of arrangement, what it's actually doing for the businesses is enabling the business to leverage to be able to raise additional capital. And this generally will help reduce the overall cost of funding for the business. So I think in looking at these instruments, it's important to not just look at the innovation stage, but to look at the entire continuum for such a business in terms of growing it from one stage to the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Are there any question from the member of the participants? You can say it directly, or you can put it in the chat. Okay. Anna, for you, what sort of support do you think the small and growing business are waiting for to innovate really need?
What sort? Can you say that again?
What sort of support?
Yeah.
Do you think the small and growing business that are waiting to innovate really need?
Okay, Yvonne talked about accelerator programs, some hubs, but you and I know, we don't really know what's going on in those programs, really. But what I'm sure that they need now is support in making them investment ready. I know that everybody's saying that, but what does it mean? What does it entail? Because if you want to attract investors, there are 3 basic things that you must have as a small growing business. There's a market. You have been able to identify, size it, segment it, identify your segments. You have the ability to go after and transform it into money. That's rule number 1. If you don't have market, whatever product and services, you might be innovative, might be special, whatever, but you don't have a market for it, meaning somebody ready to buy it, no investors will come. Number 1. Number 2 is the human capital. It's a huge challenge across all those sectors and industries. How do we, as countries, as communities, build human capital needed by these small growing businesses? Because once they come out of the university, everybody wants to work at the bank, work at the insurance company. How many young people do you know will tell you, oh no, I'm looking for a small, medium-sized company to work? Do you know them? So that's number 2. And number 3, is the value chain of financing available? In the ecosystem for SMEs and entrepreneurs, we have to look at them. Right now, you have microfinance that gives you money up to a certain level, but after microfinance, it's really difficult for a company to find the type of investment you need to go to the next stage. There's not a lot of Wangara capital out there, to tell you the truth, venture capital. There's not a lot. There's more in Ghana, because Ghana has put an effort nationally to develop that industry of venture capital. There is a fund that was set into place that is trying to move forward that industry. Not all our countries have that, but that is something that is needed. For example, having all the type of financing necessary, from angel funding, like people like you and me ready to put some small money and take that minimum viable product to the market, test it, and then go talk to Yvonne. And then after Yvonne, we will go talk to a private equity that is up from venture capital to go even further up. And then you have our banks, okay? I don't want to criticize them, because you have to put them in their, you have to put yourself in their shoes. I was there, I was already worked in a commercial bank. They just do not have the resources or the skill set necessary to look at the risk at SME level. But I think they're not doing a lot of effort either. Some of them are starting to have that specific approach, especially agribusiness, especially processing, because I mean, when you process, you impact so many people. I mean, you impact the raw material, the supply chain, and the distributors, and so on and so forth. I know banks now that are looking at it and trying to come up with instruments to support the SGBs. So I think what we need to do globally, all of us, is think of building proper ecosystems in our different countries that will include all the services and stakeholders needed for these SGBs to grow. That's what they need now. They don't want to go everywhere. They want to talk to one person. Yeah? Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah. Thank you, Anna. We have just 5 minutes, but we received 2 questions from Kasum. I think we will not have time to respond for all the 2 questions, but we can take the first one. Yvonne, what are the main challenges the small and growing business are facing for you?
Thank you, Djibril. So I think that the challenges are numerous, and it depends on the kind of business. But generally, what you usually will see is access to finance is always top on their list when you ask the challenges SGBs are facing. And I think that to address this critical issue, it's important that all the players work together. So by that, I mean, there should be collaborative effort between donors, between intermediaries that are preparing these businesses, and between the financiers themselves. Looking at that's what I mentioned earlier, that we needed to look at the entire continuum. So that we know from this stage, where do you go to? And so that donors do not only provide the grant funding and require certain metrics are met, but they are really interested in how this grant actually impacts the business and where do they go from there. Then again, you also find out that most of the businesses, I believe, are not open to certain kind of instruments. So for example, if they become so used to grant funding, they are not so open-minded to commercial capital. That probably will bring a bit of discipline into the business, even in the area of governance. And then after that, be able to grow the business from, let's say, a size 5 to a size 100, for example. So what we have seen usually is you find entrepreneurs that approach you with a very crazy valuation of their business, and that does not allow the investor to sit and agree on a suitable instrument. A case in point is a business we recently looked at, and you could tell that the business has potential. It's a startup, and so debt funding is not appropriate. Meanwhile, the entrepreneur was also not considerate on the kind of equity that they are willing to give to an investor. So we needed to innovate about the instruments we use, and we ended up settling on a convertible note, deferring the valuation a couple of years down the line when we both understand each other and we are also very sure that this is a business that we are willing to partner as an equity investor.
Yvonne, I don't know if you have the time for a second question, Awa?
Unfortunately, we do not.
Yeah.
But maybe if people need more information, you can drop off some emails or contact so that they can reach out directly. Sorry about the timing. And thank you, Djibril and Anna, Yvonne, and Brigid. It was very informative, especially for those that are in the agriculture business. So we will join the main room and have the closing plenary, and we can move on afterwards to the fun happy hour. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you, Brigid, Yvonne, and Anna for your contribution.
Djibril. Hope to talk more later.
Yeah.
Thank you.